Hello, everyone, and welcome to this live presentation called OPC Archiving. My name is Randy, and I am the presenter today. We will also provide a copy of the webinar at the end of the presentation. So, let's get into it. Again, this webinar is titled OPC Archiving. In this case, we're going to be speaking about the data custody transfer problem we have as we go from automation to IT. We'll talk about capturing real-time OPC data using OPC Classic and OPC UA. We'll talk about recording long-time historical data. How do we record it for a long period of time? We'll talk about event-based information capture, so polling versus subscription. Some optional data storage alternatives. We'll talk about preventing data loss using store and forward. And again, at the end, for those of you wondering, we'll provide a copy of this webinar to everyone. So the problem we're talking about here is we've got a control system, and what we want to do is take that information and send it out somewhere else. Now, I have a picture of a cloud here, but it's not necessarily the cloud as in the internet. It can be anything. So by the cloud, I'm representing anything that we don't know. So for example, maybe it's Microsoft SQL Server. Maybe it's Microsoft Azure. Maybe it's Amazon Web Services. Maybe we're talking about MongoDB. You know, if you're not using SQL, maybe it's something else. Don't know. Maybe it's an MQTT broker. Doesn't matter. That all goes up here into something. So the way that you would do that is we've got our middleware, OPC Expert here. To get the data into OPC, this is where into OPC Expert, we're going through OPC. So we've got these OPC servers from the control systems, and that is going to go locally into a database. I'll show you why in a little bit. I'll give you an example of some data analysis with Excel, and then we're going to send that data somewhere else, that somewhere else being again, some other permanent data storage mechanism. Now, we're going to capture OPC data, so that's the first thing we'll do. Second is we're going to collect that real-time data. So we're going to collect it in a buffer. Well, I'll show you the analysis. That's the third thing we'll do. And finally, I'll show you how we send it to the destination. I'll get into more details in a little bit. So the data custody transfer from automation to IT. Well, IT collects data, and they like to use CSVs, CSV files, comma separated value files, or XML. Maybe they want to put it in SQL, like Microsoft SQL Server or MySQL or SQLite. Maybe they want to put it to the cloud, as in the internet, maybe Amazon, AWS, IoT. Maybe they want to put it in Microsoft Azure. Maybe you even have MQTT brokers out there. Maybe you're going to something that's not SQL, like MongoDB. So lots of different destinations you can send your data. And of course, again, automation always seems to use OPC, or maybe they're using MQTT. And that's how they get data from their controllers. So from the controllers or from their applications, like maybe a human machine interface, or historian, or maybe they're doing advanced process control or whatever. So again, what you need to do is to capture that real-time data using either OPC Classic, DA, or OPC UA. So the middleware we're going to be seeing here is OPC Expert. And we've seen already in previous webinars, we took a look at this. As you notice, there's a theme in here. We looked at MQTT. We looked at Excel, tunneling, trending. We looked at server-to-server communication. So we've seen detailed explanations of how this stuff works. Now we're going to be sending it remotely to a permanent data storage destination. And so we'll see that how to make sure that there is no data loss at all, collect again data from OPC UA and DA, and send to many different destinations. And again, what this is used for is to join IT and automation. So the requirements, this is the type of stuff we need, is to reduce the file size. The amount of data that you can collect from real-time data sources is absolutely massive. It is huge. So we want to be able to reduce that file size. We want to be able to handle reconnections. Maybe those reconnections are due to maybe software problems, like maybe something crashes, or maybe your Microsoft SQL server is restarting, or you lose your internet connection or your network connection that fails. So that happens very often. And we want to prevent data loss, again, using store and forward, using a buffer. And of course, you can also use redundancy. We've seen some webinars on redundancy as well. All this stuff, there's a lot of redundancy in here. So as far as the versions of Windows, we're talking for Excel 32 and 64-bit, all the way from Excel 2003 to 2021. Again, Office 365. As far as Windows, we're talking about Windows XP all the way to Windows 7 and Windows 2003 all the way to Windows 2022. So pretty much every version of Windows you're using, I don't think anyone is using Windows 3 anymore. And of course, you want this stuff to run as a service, which means that it starts up automatically with Windows. It's always running. Your computer's up. So is this thing. You don't actually need to be logged on. Now, as far as security, and obviously security is getting more and more and more important. It's been there for a long time with us. And by the way, if you take our hands-on OPC training, we show you how this security actually works very, very well. We do a deep dive into it. So on the destination side, the destination always has their own its own security. Now, that security can be within the protocol itself. For example, whether we're using MQTT to send the data, or with the destination, for example, Amazon, Azure, SQL Server, they all have their own security. So there is SQL authentication, for example, or whatever it is you have. And IT has their own security mechanisms. Maybe you're using VPN. So all of that is the security that you get. OPC Expert works within your existing infrastructure. And on the OPC server side, of course, you get OPC UA security or Windows security, DCOM security. That's all in there. It's all baked in. And of course, all the communication can be encrypted. Doesn't mean that you have to encrypt it, but it can be encrypted, and that's pretty natural with these security mechanisms. Also, a very, very firewall-friendly setup. We're talking about using just one port. So no matter which way you're using, we're talking about using just one port to get that communication working. So it's very, very easy on firewalls. Now, the architecture, here's what it looks like. We get the OPC servers. We send those to the middleware to OPC Expert. That then sends the data locally to be stored. So there's a local buffer. And from there, you can send it out to any data destination. Now, the cool thing is that, as you see here, this is local. So if the connection to these systems goes away for any reason, you're still getting your data locally here. As soon as the connection is restored, that data from here gets sent up here. So no data loss, store and forward. So again, the way this works is, so we want to send our information somewhere. Now, for that somewhere, in this case, I'm actually going to be using Microsoft SQL Server. Of course, it can be anything, and I'll show you the different types of options. There's the middleware, OPC Expert. You get the data in via OPC. OPC Expert then sends that data to a local data store, and I'll show you that. And I'll show you how you can actually analyze this stuff with Excel. And then we're going to send that data over to Microsoft SQL Server. So first thing we're going to do is capture the real-time data. Then we'll store it we'll store it locally. I'll just show you a little bit of analysis with Excel, very, very popular. And then we'll see how to send that data off to Microsoft SQL Server. Notice that this is on another PC. Of course, SQL Server can be on the same PC, but it's a little bit more cool when you send it to a remote PC, because then we're going to cause a little problem with the network communication. All right, so let's get going with this. So what we'll do is a little demonstration. So let's get going with this. So what I have here, so there's the picture. And we'll get into remote desktop here. So here's another computer. So once again, just to show you, I'm now going to be on this computer right here. So we'll have the OPC servers. I'll archive the data, and I'll show you Microsoft SQL Server in just a little bit. So let's get into this computer. Minimize this guy. All right. So here we are local. Now the first thing I want to show you, and this is very important with OPC Expert, we're very proud of that, is that when you download OPC Expert, you just get one executable. And once you run it, look at this, it will extract all of the files. So all the files, folders, everything it will extract. There is no installation, no registry changes. So you can see here all the files that it's making. So everything is in here. Let's close this. Here is OPC Expert. So the first thing we want to do is browse our computer and find some OPC servers. And what we're seeing are some OPC servers here. So in fact, let me connect to the Kepware server. Here we are. We'll go to factory. Here we have some items. So I'll drag, drop. So we have some items here. These are coming from OPC UA. You can see the item IDs are OPC UA item IDs. So this is OPC UA. Collapse this. I'll expand this. So now I'm going to get data from OPC DA. There we go. So here we see numeric. And I'm just going to subscribe to some here. I can double click. Here we go. All right. So what we see here is the case where we're getting some data from OPC UA and also from OPC DA. OPC Expert really does not care whether it's OPC UA or OPC DA. We get the messages down here. All right, so now that we've captured this, and you've seen this in other webinars as well, we're going to archive it. So right-click, select it, right-click, and we archive and create new. Okay, here are the different options. I'll do the default one for now, which is just a CSV. Later on, we'll go to somewhere else, but let's just focus on the CSV right now. So this is local. Now, in here, I can specify my the name and so on. You can change all that. Remember, we're looking for data that changes. Yeah, we're only going to record it when it changes. If you want to poll, yeah, you can archive all the values regardless of change. You can create new files. You can specify the size, or maybe you want to do that every day, or maybe you want to create a new file every time there's a change. You can have control over the names. You can have control over the total file size, the amount of file size that you have, the timestamps, whether you're storing UTC or whether you're storing local time, and so on. So you've got lots and lots and lots of options here for control. In any case, I'll just use the default. So here we go. I click OK, and I'm going to start archiving. And we're going to see green check marks if everything works. If there's a problem or while we're setting up, we are expecting some red, like this, for example. You can see some red, so it hasn't connected yet, and it's going to connect. There we go. And we're seeing green check marks. So we're now starting to archive data. So what you see here is that we're archiving both OPC UA and OPC DA data. So we can see that right here. So let me just go back before I go on. So what we've done now is, again, we're on this computer right here. We've captured the data, and we're collecting the data in real time. That's going right here. It's going locally. We're not going to a different computer yet. We're just staying local for now. Okay, now we'll just see that the data exists. I'm going to do just a little bit of trending here, and we'll bring the data into Excel. So the first thing I want to do, let me just trend just to show you that the data is actually there. So we'll go back. So for example, if I want to trend, so I'll take this, I'll take this data right here. Let me take random. It's a little bit more interesting, and I will trend it. Since this is the first time we're trending. OPC Expert pops open the REST API server. So this is how we get to trending. This is also, and we'll show you this in the next webinar when we talk about OPC programming, this is actually what you use for programming with Python or JavaScript or VBA. So it's this server right here. So you can see that we have some data that we got in history. And if I zoom in, so here we go, I'm zooming in, and you can see the real-time data coming along. So there's our data. I'll zoom in a little bit more, and you can see the real-time data coming along. We can scroll and so on. But what you are seeing is that we're getting real-time data. If I do this a second time, we'll trend again. This time, REST API is already up. So there is the history right here, and you can see the real-time data. You can actually see that there is more data coming along. There's a cursor, you know, the usual features you need from trending. Okay, so this data is in here. But now what I want to do is pop open Excel and bring this data into Excel. So just before I do Excel, I'm going to start up just to show you. So there's Excel running. I'll start a brand new spreadsheet. And what you don't see is an OPC option. There is no menu option here, OPC. So what you have to do is tell OPC Expert Tools, Options, you got to tell it, okay, I do actually want Excel features, so I'll enable Excel features. So I check this, that's all I do, and click OK. It's quite easy to get going with this stuff here. And by the way, those of you that have questions, please go ahead and ask. So there we've just enabled Excel, and now when I start up Excel, we can see there's an OPC menu option that OPC Expert brought in. Now, when we click it, the very first thing I want to do is click the OPC status, which is the heart, just to make sure everything is working. Whenever you're starting with this stuff, just go ahead and do the status to make sure communication is working. So there we go. And here we see a heartbeat. It tells you everything is working properly. If it's not, it'll actually tell you. So it's actually quite easy to see when you have a problem. All right. The first thing people usually want with Excel is to bring in the real-time data. So that's what I'll do here first. Bring this up a little bit just so we have more room. Here we go. So I'll take this data right here and I'll drag it and I'll drop it, right? So it's just a drag and drop operation. And what you're seeing here is data that's going to come in from two different servers, one being UA and one being DA. So what you're seeing here is real-time data coming in from OPC. Here we go. And you're seeing the real-time data. So real-time data coming here from OPC DA. And here is where you can see the different, if you want to get the data yourself, that's how you actually do it. You can copy, paste, and so on. So that's real-time data. We've seen a webinar on that before. Okay. Next, I'm going to show you historical data. So you can actually bring historical data to do some automated reports. So we're going to do that. So I'll go back to the archive. So now we're getting historical data. And I'll go to historian data right here. Right? So there's historian data. You can see it's telling me to drag and drop historical items here. So I go into my archive. So there's my archive. And I'll go in. And I'll take ramp. And I'll take random. And so these are actually DA items, really. But let me bring in UA as well for those of you that are kind of wondering what's going on. I'll take this one right here, and I'll drag and drop it. So here we go. So now you can see we're going to be asking for data from three different items. Here we go. And we'll take the last minute of data from 1 minute ago until now. And we'll click OK. You can take a look at the options here. So we'll click OK. And here's the data coming in. So you can see it. We can see the data coming in here. But this is where you can see the historical data. So you can quite easily, you can very, very easily start to collect data and to create archives. This, by the way, is my time right here where I am. I'm in Canada right now. So I'm at 7:21 a.m. So this is my time we're talking about from a minute ago. So if I do, so for example, what I could say, just to show you, actually I'll show you that in a little bit. So if I go, let me just take this information here and I will, so I'll take these guys so they trend nicely. I will insert trend. So nice and easy in Excel, there we go. Okay, so you can see there's a trend of the data. So you can very, very easily use Excel. So here I just used 2 different items and I'm trending the data. Now I can also actually make this real time. For example, I can say now. So what you can see that this is updating on a regular basis. This isn't changing because we didn't change the from. So the from, I'll say equals now minus time. And this is just an Excel function. There's nothing special here in OPC. Now minus time of 1 minute. So that's how you would do it. And sure enough, look at this. This is real-time data updates in Excel using, these are all using Excel components. We didn't build this trend. You can actually make it different, but you're seeing here real-time data updates coming in. Excel is actually, I should point out, Excel is getting the data from OPC Expert using OPC UA. So that's OPC UA right in front of you. So there's OPC UA and OPC DA. And this is coming in real time. Pretty cool. Okay. So now what we've seen, go back. We've done task 1, captured the data. We collected the real-time data. Task 2, task 3, we are collecting the data for Excel analysis. So now you're seeing that the data really is local. But now what I'm going to do is, in essence, start from scratch and just send this data over to SQL Server. Now you notice SQL Server is on a separate PC. It's on a separate PC, and I'll show you that. So let's, there we go. Okay, so as I said, it's on a separate PC. I'm just going to close Excel. We don't need it right now. So won't save. Again, there's my data. I'm going to start from scratch, so I'll even close and delete this just so that there's no cheating. Okay, so we're still collecting the regular real-time data. Here we go. And there is my remote computer. This is the one with SQL Server. Now, what I'll do is I'll start up SSMS, SQL Server Management Studio, because this is how we are going to look at data. So I'm going to bring that data in, or sorry, I'm going to look at the data with SQL Server Management Studio. So it's going to start up here. Here we go. And I'll connect. And the first thing I want to show you is, whoop, there is nothing in here. So this is clean. There are no databases in here. Now, in this case, I'm using SQL Express. You can use SQL Server, whatever you want for SQL. I'm just using SQL Server as an example here. You could use MySQL. You could use MySQL on the internet. You can use MySQL locally. You can use SQLite or MongoDB. Again, whatever it is you want. Okay, so there's nothing in here right now. You can see that there are no databases. Even if I refresh, of course, there is nothing here. Let's go back to OPC Expert. Here, what I'll do, I will select all the items. So I'm selecting all the items, right-click, archive, like we've seen before, and we will create a new archive. And we'll go to, this time, to Microsoft SQL Server. And again, it's exactly the same with all these different methods. So whether we're going to Amazon, AWS, IoT, or to Azure or anywhere else, it's exactly the same thing. So we'll go next. Now, the computer I'm going to use is SQL-DB. That's the name of that. That's the name of this computer right here. You can see SQL-DB. There's a history. I've got some different options I can use for timestamps, for example, where I want the timestamp to come from, how I want my data to be structured, and so on. So that's all done right here. Okay, so what I'll do, first thing you really need to do, and OPC Expert's really, really big on this, which is we're going to test the connection just to make sure it's okay. So sure enough, we see successfully connected to the SQL Server instance. So it did actually connect and everything is fine. So that's good. And this will really, really help you. It's about reducing your total time to implement all of this stuff. So easy to test, easy to see if there are any comments. So here we'll go OK. And it's setting up the archive. There is the archive right here. So we can see the different items right here. So we'll go just like this. We see OPC UA, OPC DA, and we're going to start. Now again, red is bad, green is good. So here we go. It's just setting up. The source is red. Now it's green. We get green check marks, which is pretty universal that, hey, everything is okay. So there we go. So we're collecting real-time data from OPC UA and DA, and right now we're sending it to Microsoft SQL Server. So here, when we go back to SQL Server, and remember, this doesn't update live, so you have to tell it to refresh. And sure enough, there's our history database right here. We'll expand this, look at the tables. I'll show you the real-time data. So select top 1,000 rows. Now this is real-time data. So this is a table with real-time data. This table doesn't change in size. Here you can see the real-time data. If I refresh this, you can see the data is updating. So here we see instrument is at 17, and now it's 7, and now it's 5, right? So we're actually getting real-time data, and you can see the number of rows, 10 rows, because we're collecting 10 items. Right, and the number of rows doesn't change because it's only the real-time data. But if you want to take a look at history, so take a look at historical data. So we'll go to historical data, select top 1,000 rows, nice and easy. So you can see that we got 690 rows, and now 724 rows. Remember, only the data that changes is actually archived again. So because it's by exception, of course, you can pull too. But you can see 806 rows, and every time there's a change, OPC Expert sends data to the remote SQL server. So just like this, 806 rows, and now you can see 908 rows. And this is actually much more obvious if we take a look at one item very specifically. Now, you can do an SQL query. Those of you that know SQL, you can do that pretty easily. However, what I'll do is I will copy, I'll make a new query right here. So I've got it in my buffer. There we go. So we're just going to select one item, specifically the read count. So I'll execute. And you can see here the read count. And I like this one for testing because there is a new, it increments by 1, so you're not missing, if you're missing data, you can see it's 950, it's at 956, we've stored 140 rows, so we didn't start it at 1. You can see all of the data. This was right at the beginning, and you can see that it's incrementing by 1 every time, all the way up to the top. If I read it, so we got 956 here. If I execute this again, you can see that there's an update, and watch, 995, there's 998, so we got 95, 96, 97, 98, and there's 98, 99, 1,000, right? So it just keeps increasing, and you can see that there is no data loss. So pretty cool. What I'll do is I'll just reset this, so we're at the 1,003. Nice, easy way to remember this. Oh, no, I'll go in here. And I will restart this guy. So we're not being particularly, and I should have really, SQL-DB. So here we are. Oh, there we go. Restart. So we haven't restarted yet. We'll restart anyway. There we go. And you'll see exactly when there's a failure, how often. Now, this computer is pretty quick. So it's restarting. If you can see already data is failing to get to SQL Server because SQL Server shut down. So here we can see the request timed out as SQL Server is coming back. And what I'll do, so I'll come back to that. So we're coming in here. So you can see the data is still bad in here. Okay, so now we're back. Put this in the middle, and we'll go like this, and we're coming back. Okay. There we go. Yes. Seriously? Remote desktop. Okay. Maybe I just did it a little bit too early. There we go. Perfect. So you can actually see this is quite real. Okay. And I will start up SQL Server again. And we'll take a look at the data. Now, again, this was a complete reboot. And as this is coming in, just want to remind you so from this computer, we're doing a remote desktop to here. So we're seeing SQL Server Management Studio. We're seeing it right here, and it's just setting up. So again, we rebooted this PC, so we should have lost data, unless, of course, we did a store and forward. So here we go, SQL Server Management Studio. You see it's just setting up here, and it's asking me recover selected files. No, I don't even care. There we go. And we will connect. Perfect. And now I'll do that query again. Now, of course, you have your databases here. There's the history, but I'm just going to paste that query again, just from scratch. So we'll start a new query. We'll paste, we'll execute, and here is our data. So you can see that the data is coming along, and all the way down to where we had. So we were at about 1,000 or so, right? So you can see no data loss in here. And as we come up, there we go. The data is all there. So pretty cool. It survives a reboot. And why it survives a reboot? Because once this computer is gone, OPC Expert is storing all of the data right here. When the communication is restored, it grabs the data and sends it over to SQL Server. So again, the whole point is that there is no data loss. Really quite important that there is no data loss. Oh, and I should really show you again the the real-time data. So and if I refresh this, you can see the data is coming along. So this is in the history. And again, the real-time data is all still here. Oh, I edited the 200 rows. And here we go. We've got our 10 rows. And you can see the data is changing. You look at instrument, it is 7. And now it's 17, 6, right? So it's 6 over here. So it is, now it's 4. So it really is changing. And it's coming to SQL Server. Okay. So we're going to take a look at this. Okay. So there we go. Now I will answer your questions as more questions as we move along. I've answered quite a few questions over here already. Let me just get back in here. So we've now seen how data is captured in real time, sent to a local database. Oh, I should actually point out, I'll show you that later. Thanks for asking there. Okay, so there's a local database, and I'll show you that when I finish this. There's Excel, and we're sending all of that information to SQL Server. And I showed you the different tasks here, from capturing the data, collecting the real-time data, analyzing the data with Excel, and then sending it to SQL Server. One of the cool things is, once the data is in SQL Server, you can use whatever tools you want over here on SQL Server to actually analyze the data or do whatever you want, but you can still get access to this data right here, and the data is available via OPC UA, both OPC UA DA and OPC UA HA. Okay, so this ends, pardon me, I'll just finish off a few things for those of you that need to go. This is in essence the end of the formal portion of the webinar. Let me just finish off with a few more things, then I'll get back to your questions. Now, to get help and troubleshooting, you can download OPC Rescue and OPC Expert. Both of these are really terrific for diagnosing problems. A lot of you have written back to us, said that this was particularly useful. So OPC Rescue, OPC Expert, everything I've shown you here, you can download for free. So you can download for free, and you can do your troubleshooting. With OPC Expert very specifically, you can do a whole bunch of activities like trending, bridging, tunneling. So you can archive, you can do calculations and so on. You can send messages to IoT. In this case, I showed you trending, I showed you archiving, and I showed you the Excel connectivity. Of course, you also saw how to send data to SQL Server. You can also come to our hands-on training. We have hands-on training classes. These are vendor neutral, which means you've seen we use a whole bunch of different OPC servers, different OPC clients. We show you what the difference is between vendors, how different vendors attack the OPC problem. And you can earn the certified OPC professional designation. You can attend one of our hands-on workshops. Again, you'll see how to configure OPC Classic with DCOM and also OPC UA. You'll troubleshoot OPC systems. You'll see how to make that security work, and you will learn OPC best practices. You'll get actually 2 computers, which is kind of neat. So one computer for the client, one computer for the server. You get local communication, remote communication. You set things up, then we mess it up for you. You have to fix it, so you have to diagnose. It's very, very, very informative, and you can earn your certified OPC professional designation. Now, the workshops, we have workshops that don't require any travel. So these workshops have an interactive, they are interactive with a live instructor, and they are remote. So live, remote classes with a live instructor. These, I can't emphasize this enough. This is all live. So it's done in real time with a live instructor. This is not a recording. You ask questions, you get your answers. So we have these classes. They don't require any travel, but we have public classes, private classes, and of course we have on-site training if you need that as well. And you can check out the dates at opcti.com. So you can take a look at the dates when we have these. We've got workshops that are coming up. Last slide here, and then we'll get back to your question. So we're going to send you an email with some links. Number 1, a link to this webinar recording. So no need to ask, you're going to get this webinar recording. You're also going to get the download for OPC Expert. You can download OPC Expert, and you can play around with it. You can archive data. You can do everything that I've shown you here and in other webinars. We'll also send you some short videos showing archiving examples, trends and reports, how to do that, how to get real-time and historical data. And if you want, you can go to opcexpert.com/archive OPC data. So you can go there and see those videos on your own. But we will send you that email containing this information, as well as an invitation to our next webinar, which is on OPC programming, which will happen in August. So just in August. And you'll see how to program using VBA, Python, and JavaScript. So we'll show you how to do that using our toolkit, which makes it particularly easy for you to get going. So anybody doing Python or JavaScript or VBA, you'll see how to get that done. So you can create your own applications. Okay, everyone. Again, this ends the formal part of the presentation. What I'll do now is go back to the questions I didn't answer previously. So we have just a few minutes. Let's see here. Isadora, you're asking, exists a maximum of historic data save, or is a space unlimited for the case of the SQL? So good question. So the question is, really, the question boils down to how much data can you store? And I'll show you. So it's really the size of your disk. So here, the question is how much data can you store here in the store and forward, and it's the size of your disk, which means it's a huge amount of data. Now you could actually say, yeah, I don't want to use my entire disk. I only want to store an hour's worth of data, or I only want to store 10 gigabytes of data, or I don't want to have a limit. So you can do all of that. So that is all available, and you can do that. And you can do that right in here. That's all done right here. And so, for example, if SQL Server isn't available for a month, well, that's okay. You store all your data locally when SQL Server comes back up. Or again, I should also point out Amazon, AWS, or Azure, whatever it is you have up there, or MQTT. As soon as the communication is back up, OPC Expert starts to send the data. And it doesn't overwhelm your historian either. You can configure how often you actually send data in there, what kind of chunks. It doesn't have to be a 1 gigabyte chunk, which of course will bring down your system. Isidora, I hope that answers your question there. Okay. Barbas, is it possible to save data to OPC HA server? So yeah, in fact, actually, all of this data is available via OPC UAHA. So what that means is that you can, all of this data, if you have a UAHA client, you can actually retrieve the data directly from here. In fact, when I did the trend, that was actually using OPC UAHA and OPC UADA. So it's all OPC UA. So if you have a client, you can actually grab that data. So very, very, very interesting there. Barbas. Antonio, I'm interested in the Microsoft Azure feature. What kind of Azure feature resources does it communicate with? Interesting, Antonio. So, Antonio, OPC Expert will send it to Azure. Once it's in Azure, Azure has its own way. Once it captures the data, it puts it inside to Microsoft SQL Server or to BI. You can do that. It goes into its own resources. It has the raw data. From there, you manage which Microsoft resources it actually communicates to. So we bring you the real-time data, and from there, you grab it. Oh, Antonio, you're asking about .NET Core for the programming. Well, we can take a look at that. It's a good idea, actually. We'll take a look to see what that is. Orencio, it's possible to have average or a value from an OPC item. Yes, actually, it is, Orencio. Let me just show you real quick here. So I'll go back, and I'll just show you. So we'll go here. So if I go, for example, so I've got random over here. We'll go to read history. I'll do that real quick here. So you can see what's available. So you can say, for example, last 6 minutes until now. But this time what you want is average. So this is processed or calculated data. And you can see the different functions that are available. So there's time average. There are a whole bunch of different calculations you can do. So the min, max. So whatever refresh rate you're bringing in. So for example, you're saying average, right? So you're saying average. So for the past 6 minutes, it will give you the average for every second. Or you can say, for example, I want the average for every 10 seconds. So I want the past 6 minutes of data with a 10-second average. So that's what that's what it would actually give you. Renzi, I hope that answers your questions. Okay, folks, looks like we are out of time here. So I'll quickly end it here. And I should also point out the one last question about can it run as a service? Yes, let me grab that. So here, tools, and you can install as a Windows service. So you can actually install it as a Windows service, and now it will start up with Windows. So you can run it as a system account or whatever other account. So you can certainly do that. So install it, uninstall it, and so on. So that is all available here. Okay. So once again, folks, here we go. So we're going to send you an email containing this webinar recording, a link to download OPC Expert, some short videos showing you the archiving examples, reporting, and so on. You can get that you can get it from this website right here, opcexpert.com, archive OPC data, and we'll send you an invitation to the next presentation here. So good stuff, everyone. Once again, thank you for coming to the webinar. Keep your email questions coming. If you do have questions, just let us know, and I will send everyone a reply by email. So we'll get you by email. And again, please come to the next webinar in August on OPC programming. Exciting stuff. Thanks again, everyone, and I hope to see you again. Bye-bye.